Okay, I'm doing this video to reinforce some training that I did with a customer this evening. He was importing art from the internet, auto tracing it, had to group and ungroup some things, and then he was not using the scroll in and out wheel on the mouse, so we want to reinforce how to do that and how to pan the drawing by holding down the scroll wheel. We're going to edit some nodes, do some cleanup work of the design, delete nodes, and add some other geometry, and then we'll toolpath it. So he was working with a 6x6 inch material, 3/4 of an inch thick. He likes to touch off on the top of his material and in the center of his work. So I will tell it okay, and then we're going to find the artwork that he had. I've already downloaded it, so I'm going to import art PNG file, and this was well, I thought it was there. Where did I put it? Oh, it's under clipart, sorry. So it's under documents, and then C for clipart, C for wow, clipart, and it was a Catholic baptism cross. We'll tell it okay. It's going to come right in, and it's actually sized appropriately. I never want to rely on the edge of the material for the edge of my cut, so I'm going to modify this. And we talked about this, and he recognized this, and he's using bigger material as well. So I'm going to just go 7x7, and then I'll let the machine cut the edge of the piece. There were a couple different things. Once this comes in, if I double click on it, I get my normal handles and I can move it around. I can rotate it, do whatever I want, give it a second, it'll refresh. And he had apparently been importing DXFs and other CAD files, because when this comes in, he was a bit confused by the red box around it and what that meant. But it just means that that is an art file, a JPEG, a PNG, there's any number, bitmap, there's any number of different ways. And so what we want to do with this is we want to trace it. So I'm going to use the tracing icon, and so this is going to trace the bitmap and fit vectors to the selecting artwork or bitmap. Pretty simple. Once you click this, we'll be able to select whether it's a black and white drawing or color. This is black and white, so it's easier for it to trace. If it's color, we'll have several different colors here. We can pick which ones we want it to try to trace. But being black and white, this is going to be simple. We'll just pretty much use the defaults and tell it to preview it, and it did the tracing already, and it looks pretty good. So I'm going to apply that, and then I like to close this drawing all the time. Once I'm done with using it, I like to close it and come back to my real familiar design home screen. This is what I know. Now if I'm going to zoom in on this by scrolling with the center button, or center wheel, we're going to see two different things. We see this gray undercolor and then a black line around it. These are the vectors. The black lines are the vectors that were just created, but they're on top of our drawing. So if we double click on this to get the handles, I'm going to grab this and just drag it out of the way, and we'll see what we had. These are the vectors that we're going to do the work with for the engraving and carving. This is just the picture that we no longer need. You could delete it. I usually pull it off the side so that I can look at it together if I need to. I could make some modifications to this, and I may want to use this as a reference. Whatever. We're not going to work with this anymore. Vectric did the bulk of the work and has cleaned this up. So there's a couple things that I see that I want to clean up. I don't like some of the irregularities here and here. So this corner, and around here. And also, I don't really care for this. We can get rid of this because we're not going to be able to use it. And then modify the shape of this to give, roughly this same thickness of a wall here in this pocket. So let's work on it. If I click on the vectors that it created and I touch any vector, it's selecting them all. I'll click somewhere off of it and just click on any vector, and they're all grouped together. And that's good if I'm wanting to move the drawing around and center it, but I'm just going to center it on my material and then close it and come back to my design screen. But I want to ungroup it at this point because I need to get into this area so that I can pocket this and this area, and I don't want the outside line or vector to be selected at the same time. So to do that, I'm going to select anything, highlight it, hit the right button, and go to Ungrouped Objects and ungroup onto Groups layer. So now, if I pick this area that I want to pocket out in here, I can select this and I can do it. I can do this and I can do this, and I can do the inside of the dove appropriately. That's great. That gives me 90% of what I need to do. But then we've got this area. I don't need this, so I'm going to just highlight it and hit the delete key. And then this, I don't need it with this big block here. I want to modify this line so that it more closely follows the profile of the dove, and the wall is roughly this thick. So to do that, I'm going to have that line or that closed vector, and I'm going to hit the right button, and I'm going to go to Node Edit Mode. The shortcut for that would be just typing N on the keyboard, but I'm going to select it here. Now I can zoom in, and what this does is this shows us all the points that we're working with. And then we can even control it more if I zoom in. Any of these white boxes, these are handles. So this lets me modify the curve of what's there. What I'm going to do though, I'm going to come on top of these black nodes and just delete them. I'm going to grab these and just get them approximately where I want them. But I don't want the hard edges there. So scroll in, adjust that curve. That looks good. But I want to be able to bring this in and swoop it in a little more. So I'm going to hit the right button, and I'm going to insert a point. And then on that point, I'm going to hold down the left button and drag that node. Delete that node. Get on top. Delete. And I'll delete that. Oop. Control Z would undo. Edit. Undo, remove span. Get on top of this and hit D. And I'm going to come here and play with this to get a little better arc. Okay, these are straight lines or segments, and so I'm going to get on top of here and hit the right button, and I'm going to convert that to a Bezier. A Bezier curve is the one that has these white handles and lets me really play with this. So I'll curve that one up, but grab that node and pull it down, and in just a couple of quick minutes you can really tweak this thing and make it look like what you want. That looks pretty good to me. I could move this one a little bit. So I'll just drag it along the line and then pull it away and play with that curve there. Or just delete that node, and that makes it nice. Okay, that works for me. I didn't like the way the outside profile works, so I'm going to select that line. I'm still in node mode, so it stays there and just selects the new profile. Get on top of this, hit D to delete, D to delete, and D to delete. That works for me for the top shoulder. I'm going to clean this a little bit by deleting this and this and this. I want to take that too. It's okay. Scrolling in and out with the wheel. And I'm just cleaning it up as I go. That looks good. And then there was one at the bottom. So I hold down the wheel and I can pan or move the whole drawing. Yeah, that's okay, but I don't need that as a hard corner. Pull that out a little bit. That still works for me. Maybe bring this in a little bit, and therefore this one a little bit. So yeah, in a couple minutes that's been modified and looks good. That's cuttable. So I'll save that. I'm going to file save as, give it a name, give it a place that I want to save it on my PC. Now in my case, I've already done this. I'm going to go to V for Vectric. I keep most of my vector jobs under here. This was the baptism cross, and I believe, well, maybe I didn't. Okay, so this will be baptism cross 6-inch. I may save these in different sizes. They were going to use this as a hanger, a Christmas ornament on the tree. So we need to put a hole in it so we can run our hanger through it. Now when we do this, we see both the crosshair and the circle. I'm going to make this a 0.28 because I'm going to use I'm going to use a 1/4 inch tool, but I'm not sure what the bottom of the tool looks like. Is it made for drilling operations like a mortising bit, or do I need to go a little larger than that and let it circle its way down? I'm just going to leave this at 0.28, 0.3, whatever. That's fine. But when I come over here, it's going to create that based on where my crosshair is, not the circle that sometimes shows up. That's showing me the approximate size of the circle, but not where it's going to be. So I want to come here, roughly, and drop it right there. That looks good. I'm going to actually nudge it a little bit to the left. Since it's highlighted, I can double click on it and drag it wherever I want. Okay, that's easy. But when it's highlighted, I can just use my arrow keys, and if I scroll in, each tap of the key becomes a smaller incremental move overall across the drawing. So if I scroll in all the way, it's a very small movement. So I'm just eyeballing it. That'll work. Click somewhere else to deselect, and I'm ready to toolpath. Refresh the save, and then the customer was using version 8.5 of VCarve, so his switch to toolpath side is not in this location. It's down in the box somewhere. I don't recall whether it was the second group or not, but it's the same type of icon. It does the same thing. We're going to touch it and close off the design area because we're done. Come over to the cut listing side. So on the toolpathing, I would first take care of the hole that's going to go all the way through. Then I would pocket this and this and this and this, and then cut the profile. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to do a pocket command because remember we did a larger hole than our tool was, and I'm going to cut all the way through. So I'm going to say T for the thickness of material plus 0.020 equal. And I don't recall with version 8.5 whether he could have multiple tools here or not. So I'm going to remove this. So we're just going to do it with one tool. And we're going to look at it because we're obviously going to lose some of the point and closed tight areas because the tool can't get all the way in there. With a 1/4 inch cutter, it's going to leave a bit of this area of this tight pointed part of the wing. It may be fine to look at, and we'll visualize it and see. So he's going to use a 1/4 inch tool. We're going to go all the way through. I may have picked the tool from foam or something because that's pretty aggressive. So I'm going to come through and say 5 passes. And I'm going to start in the center. I'm going to do the offset setup. Start in the center and kind of work its way out for the pocket. I'm going to ramp in over the course of an inch. And I'll call this pocket for the hanger hole. And I'm using a 0.25 end mill. Calculate. It warns me that it's going to cut through, and my cut through depth was 20 thousandths into the spool board. That's fine. I don't need to look at this, so I'm going to close it and come back to my main area, and I see that I didn't get the hole that I wanted. I'm pocketing this lower area. So let's double click on that again. That'll open it back up, and let's see what we were working with. We don't get to see on the 3D view. We need to see the 2D view. So with his screen, you'd have to switch this way. With the more recent updates, we have an icon here, so we can have both the 2D view and the 3D view on screen at the same time. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to use all the same operations and feeds and speeds that I had selected before, but I'm going to say just do this hole and calculate. And that's going to cut through again, but it's only going to do the hole for the hanger. Reset preview, preview all, bang. And that works. So next I'm going to do the pocketing for the detailed areas. And I'm only going to go do these 1/4 of an inch deep. I'll use the same end mill. I'm going to do this in 2 passes. And the offset strategy works. I'll ramp in, and I will call this pocket detailed areas with a 0.25 and mil. The reason I put the tool names here is that it makes it easier when we're looking at the tool list to see which ones can be grouped together. I don't need to preview that. And I didn't pick the right areas. I must be tireder than I thought I was. So going back into the detailed areas, and I'm going to just select out. Nothing's selected now. I'm going to hold down the shift key so I can select this area, add to that selection because the shift key is down, and select that and this, and recalculate. And I'll reset the preview and preview all. So I first want to drill the hole. Done. I want to pocket everything out. Done. Next thing will be to cut the profile around the outside of the shape. And so I'm going to do a profile cut. And I want it to be T, the thickness of the material, plus 0.020 equal. I'm wearing headset, and I'm hearing a delay, so what I'm hearing in my headset is a quarter of a second or so behind what I'm saying. It's confusing. Anyway, I'm going to do this in 5 passes. And it's a climb cut. I'll do a separate last pass, oversizing it by 15 thousandths of an inch. So what it's going to do is not put the edge of the tool against this outside vector, this vector. It's going to come outside that 15 thousandths of an inch for the first, second, third, fourth pass. On the 5th pass, it's going to bring it into the collision where the vector is going to be touching the side of the tool. But what that'll do is let the tool clean up the witness lines, if there are any, but showing each of the different depth of cuts of the passes. So that does a great job. I'd use this on Corian and everything. It looks great. I'm going to edit my tabs, and I'm going to say throw a tab here, 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 and here. You can only add the tabs in the 2D drawing. You can only select what vectors you want to work with in the 2D drawing, but I just like having them here because it's quick. I'm going to add a ramp. It's a 1-inch ramp. That's all great, and calculate. And this is the profile cutout with a 0.25 and mil. And we'll calculate. And once that's done, I'll go ahead and reset the view, kick on all the tool paths in the order that we've got them, and preview all. Comes in, does the hole, great. Starts and does the pockets, and then does the cutout with the tabs. And if I hold down the left button, I can pivot. That looks good. I have my tabs on nice flat areas that I can cut them off with an oscillating cutter and then hit them with a palm sander, and they're done. Don't have to spend a lot of time doing anything special with them. That looks great. Good to go. Now, if I wanted to get in closer and use a smaller bit with the newer software, so we don't have the ends of these wings rounded off, I can do it this way. I'll close this down, and I'm going to come into the pocket detailed area. Open that up. With the newer versions, we can have multiple tools here. So I'm going to select a smaller tool, and the same vector lines, same groups that we shift and added, and I'm going to come in with an 1/18 inch. I'm going to come in with an 1/8 inch tool, and it's 60 inches per minute and 15. That's good. A 40% step over. It looks good, and I'll have it calculated. But what we want to watch here is the names. The naming conventions are going to be a little weird because it takes what we had before and then adds clearing to the first tool, which we had used, which was the 1/4 inch tool. But the one that it just created was the one using the 1/8 inch tool. If I hover on top of it, it tells me what tool I'm using, but it didn't change the name because it didn't know. So I'm going to have to come in here manually and rechange and update the name. So that's the detailed area, pocketing the detailed areas with a .125 end mill. And that sounds good. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. Since I have the big tabs on it, it would not be impossible to come in here and just have the smaller 1/8 inch bit. Oh, there it is. Come in and just clean up the outside areas of that pocket and to dig deeper into these pointed areas. That would hold. It wouldn't break out. So what I could do is take this and move this down. So these three operations are using the same tool. Then I do a tool change and come through and pocket it, clean it out, and then just cut everything loose from the tabs. So that's what I'm going to do. So let's export the G-code. To do that, we come to the Save Toolpath, and we'll click that, and it'll ask us what toolpaths we want to use. I want to take this and this and this because they all use the same tool, and I want to save those all to one file. I only want to run one file that's going to drill the hole, pocket them out, and cut the profile out with the tabs. So I'll save that, and I've already done this. The audio didn't work. And we're going to put that in the same drawing. So I'm going to call that the first tool of Baptism 2, because the first time I saved it, we didn't use the 1/8 inch bit. It was just all done with a 1/4 inch end mill. So Baptism 2, I'm using a 1/4 inch and an 1/8 inch. But right now, this is what I'm saving. So the first tool of Baptism 2 is a 1/4 inch end mill. Save it. Do you want to replace it? Sure. It'll update the time. And then I'm going to turn these off and select this and save this. So same job name. This would be Baptism 2. So the second tool of Baptism 2 is a .125 end mill. Do you want to replace it? Yes. So we have two different ways to do the job. One with a tool change and one without. And what I would do is just cut it, see what you think. Because doing a tool change, it adds time, but it also adds clarity and detail. So it's all up to you in the finished product. So this is a good little drawing tool. We did a lot of different work with nodes and editing and things like that, but it's a good little project. So I'm Eric Schiller with Yeti Tools Southeast. www.yetismartbench.com, and my phone number is 205-871-6618. I do sales and training for the Yeti SmartBench across the United States. Thanks.